Hello and welcome back to the Traker channel, where today we are doing our second attempt to get to orbit. If you watched the last episode, you may have noticed that the rocket did not quite reach orbit. In fact, didn't get as close to orbit as my previous suborbital designs. So here is the rocket on the truck, ready to be constructed on the launch pad. Don't know why I needed to detach the decoupler from it, because it was going to have a decoupler on it anyway. Yep, there I am attaching one. Then there's a second stage engine. You can see the decoupler there I just moved up has a shroud on it. Until I add the second stage engine, and then that shroud disappears, meaning the engine, there's no shroud around the third stage engine. You can see there's a shroud into stage for it now, but it disappears. Yeah, look, it's gone now. So now the rocket's just got this weird gap in between stage 2 and stage 3. And there we go, the rocket is complete. Let's get the Kerbals and evacuate them from the launch pad. There we go, they're all watching. And it's time to launch this thing. Do we reach orbit? Do we not reach orbit? There, I'm checking. It's not going to hit the launch structure. It's not really a launch tower, is it? It's liftoff. Laser Kerman is the pilot for this one. Coming up on first stage burnout. And I delay the second stage a bit because I didn't control from the capsule, and I knew it wouldn't separate very well because I'd have to switch to the next stage. So here we are on the second stage. You can see that eyesore of a gap in between the second and third stage. Coming up on second stage burnout now. Now you may notice that the third stage has got a Terrier engine this time. The previous engine it used was based off of an AJ-10, which didn't have enough thrust to lift it into orbit, and so it fell back into the atmosphere. Now, I wasn't intending to use a Terrier engine. I was intending to use the first stage of the Vanguard engine. This engine on the first stage of Vanguard, and have an engine plate to cover it. Which that tended to be more... I managed to get a shroud over the last one because I used an engine plate. But, you see, as I was trying to take the rocket apart, because you see you can't actually load in with your craft in pieces like I show. You have to build it first, and then behind the scenes I take it all apart so it looks like a big pile of parts on the runway, and then I transport those parts to the launch pad and then turn it into a rocket. But you see, when I was taking the rocket apart, it just exploded every time, because I have no idea why either. It just exploded every time because of the engine plate. So I decided engine plates are not a good idea for EVA career. So you can see we're on a suborbital trajectory. We've got well more than enough delta V to reach orbit. And you can see we have indeed reached orbit for the first time with a rocket built in EVA. Laser Kerman has a massive smile on her face. I end up doing quite a few EVA reports as it flies round Kerbin. But this is my first orbit with a rocket constructed in EVA. So there I'm just checking the contracts, seeing what was completed and my first milestones, which I should check in a few seconds. I did check that for a very long time, that one, didn't I? Orbit Kerbin. We didn't tell the recovery team that you'd be coming back. I mean, I completely got that wrong, so disregard that. There we go, I look at world's first milestones to have a look. We have entered orbit. We've performed a spacewalk in Kerbin. And I just noticed, you know, I was saying about the monolith that I was flying around on the last episode and I wasn't getting a notification for finding it. I just saw it in the world's first milestones, so yeah. You may have noticed I had a shot of Laser Kerman smiling, and now I'm doing a lot of science spam around the planet. So here I go and get my mountains report, then a highlands report, which takes a few attempts to do, then a desert report, and then a shores report, which takes a few attempts because the shores is very narrow. And then I try flying over to the Badlands and getting a report there as well. Except I couldn't get a report from the Badlands, it was just highlands and grasslands and occasionally mountains. You can see it's even got that kind of yellower grass at where the Badlands is, but I just couldn't get a Badlands report. So I guess the Badlands is slightly south of the equator, but not perfectly on the equator. So after orbiting round a few times and bringing the KSP into daylight, I stop over the crater and deorbit. Now I thought that deorbiting above the crater would bring me down to the space center, but as you can see here, I am completely overshooting the space center by a lot, and I nearly end up at the next continent. Coming down with the parachute deployed and landed, and that brings Laser's first and my first orbital flight in the EVA career to an end. I'm now doing a couple of contracts to go around on the truck again doing EVA reports on the surface. This drive took maybe 50 minutes total, so I've sped it up quite fast. You can see I got it stuck a couple of times. There you can see that bug again where the rover sinks into the surface and I have to quick save and quick load. Because if I just carry on going through the ground, it explodes. I guess what happens is it reaches a gap in the terrain when it hits another tile and then falls into the ground, and then because it's technically flying at that point, the game explodes it. So now I'm heading over to do the other contract. You can see the terrain is quite hilly back there. There we go. And that's another thing, like that bug is so weird where it sinks into the terrain, because it only happened once on this drive. That lasted 40 to 50 minutes. And I've had a rover drive on another planet before where it happened like every 10 minutes. It makes me wonder how that Sid Spooky managed to go all the way around Kerbin without ever sinking into the terrain. Like, he flipped the rover quite a few times, but I never saw it sink into the terrain on the video. So here is Valentina arriving back at the Space Center. Here I am showing off one of my new Kerbals that I've hired. Alwell Kerman, who's an engineer. She is a scaredy cat, so she won't ever go to space. She's just a rocket engineer to build the rockets. So here I am getting the parts together to build another torture device that pulls high G's on the Kerbal. I've made it a similar design to the one before. And you see, in the previous videos where I was showing off the launch clamps, I found out that you could lock the launch clamps in place off of the launch pad, so I tried doing that here, but you can see that didn't really work because the launch clamps were attached with their main attachment to it, like the bit that gets detached, so it never gave, I guess because the capsule is the root part, so I had to kind of awkwardly place a truss on the side of one and then place a capsule on top of it to lock the physics on it. Then I add a bunch of wheels for the bearing, and then the Kraken attacked. So I had to do some cheats to make sure the Kraken did not attack again. And then a lot of moving things around to build this. And you can see it's a little bit wonky, but I don't want to use the move tool again because that was what caused the Kraken attack. So here I am trying to attach the fuel tanks in a line to make a big arm to make Sigwell black out. And here I am getting a jet engine, because you may have saw while I was transporting the parts, the jet engine exploded for no reason. So I got a new one, and then I had to deconstruct the arm and then construct it again because it went all weird since I unloaded it. And now I'm attaching the jet engine and the wing. Now this is a really similar design to before, but for whatever reason it didn't work very well. I know I'm missing the landing gear wheel, but you'll see in a minute that didn't matter. It did spin up briefly, but you'll see the problem occur in a minute. So you can see the problems arising already without the landing gear wheel. So I go and give it a push with the truck. And there you can see the truck gets pushed back by the jet blast. So I have to come back up to it again. And then give it another push. Bill falls off the side of the truck, and there we go. The jet engine has picked it up, and it's now spinning. And then, in a panic, I switch to the Kerbal because I want to switch to the spinning arm. And you can see it's bending the bearing so much that the arm nearly flew off of the bearing. To prevent me from actually killing Sigvis Kerman, I decided to shut off the jet engine and not do this contract. So I enter 8 times speed again as I try and do a quick fix on this. I try maybe bumping it around the truck to see if I can get it back on its bearing again. But that didn't work, so I got Alwell to climb it and modify the bearing to see if I could get it to fall back in place. But it just wouldn't budge until it fell, and then it went too far. So I had to kind of use the trusses to make a weird arm that held around the central bearing, which you can see it's not very good looking because there's a big gap at the end. And that ends up causing more problems than it solved. So I try pushing it again with Alwell Kerman, but because Alwell Kerman is not strong enough to push it, that doesn't end up doing anything. You can see I try using the other launch clamp as a top for the bearing to stop it coming off. But no matter how much pushing I did with the truck, it would just not start spinning. So I tried getting the truck under the arm and using the truck as the wheels to get it going. And this seemed to work. It seemed to work quite well until it popped off the bearing because of the gap at the end of the arm. At this point I have lost all hope that this is going to work, but I just continue anyway with the truck spinning it around. You can see I ran Bill right over there. And then... But yeah, this torture device didn't really work very well, did it? And then the arm fell off of the truck. And so that means that this is a failure of this torture device. We've reached the end of the video now, so remember, if you didn't enjoy the video, to dislike and unsubscribe, and maybe you'll watch the next one as I end it with Bill being ran over.